All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here, we're doing our preview and prediction for the Arizona Wildcats for 2025. Loading this coaching staff, Brett Brennan, 38-56 record as the lead man at a various amount of different destinations as head coach. Steph Doggy is going to be offensive coordinator. Spent last year at Marshall. I don't know if you remember this guy, Nick, but I remember like 15 years ago, he was a complete baller at quarterback for Texas Tech. So it's nice to see he's making some routes in the coaching realm. And then Danny Gonzalez, first year in role as defensive coordinator. 50th in the portal and when it comes to the high school class. 4-8 mark. They had 6 losses by double figures. This is a team a lot of people thought could contend for the conference championship, and they got absolutely blown out most of the season. So a lot to turn around to do here. We start with this offense. A big reason why they were so poor, Nick, is they were just abysmal on this side of the ball. 114th nationally in scoring, and that includes having the best receiver in the country in Tetairoa McMillan be a complete matchup nightmare on a weekly basis. Now he's gone, and we have to find a way to improve these numbers. So we only return 4 starters, dip to the portal to get 13 guys. Noah Fafita returns at quarterback, though, and that's a big plus. This is a guy with nice mobility, very competitive player that's good at making tough plays look easy. Has shown a good arcing ball downfield, has great confidence in his pass catchers, does showcase some nice intermediate velocity, impressive off-platform thrower. I think he has a nice touch to the outside, nice poise as well. This past season, though, he was less effective, less accurate, had double the interceptions, wasn't able to pull his offense out of the dumps with his playmaking like he did as a freshman at 5'10", 188. What do you think about Fafita, Nick? Kind of mixed reviews through 2 years now where he didn't exactly progress like we expected last year, and now one of his best friends, who was an elite playmaker, is gone, so there's going to be a lot more pressure on his shoulders.
Mixed reviews through 2 years, I think is a good way to put it. This offense was poor last year, despite having an All-American and McMillan, who was taken top 10 in the NFL draft, finds his new home with Carolina Panthers, where I think he'll be really solid for that offense, and certainly working with Bryce Young will be really good for his career. But as for Arizona, this offense has to find a way to be better. 114th in the nation in points per game, 21.8 points per game. It's just not good enough. Just barely over 100 yards per game on the ground is not good enough. The passing attack was great, which obviously when you have Fafita and McMillan kind of makes it easy. They were just under 250 yards per game through the air. But that's going to take a dip back this year. They have to be more balanced, and they have to find a way to be a more balanced offensive approach, run the ball a lot more often. I think Fafita's got to be better this year in all assets. Last year, he had a 60% comp rate, just under 3,000 yards passing, 18 touchdowns, but he had 12 picks. Those 12 picks is a poor number there, right? 2.8 interception percent ratio there. Not a good ratio at all, right? The 12 interceptions was a poor number for him. He was wildly inaccurate at times, really seemed to be swinging the ball around into harm's way and making mistakes for this offense. He's got to be better. Obviously, a player that's been around now for 2 years as a starter, a younger player still, who still has a lot left in the tank, so I think they're fine with him. I think he'll still be a quarterback that can really develop and turn to a star here, but he's got to be more accurate this year. He's got to be better at protecting the football, make better decisions here. A weaker wide receiving room, even if they do have a really strong trio we'll talk about in a second, so he's got to be careful and mindful of that. He doesn't have a safety blanket in McMillan anymore. I'm curious to see how he progresses this year. Is he going to be like his, what we saw in 2023, where he was a lot more accurate, was cutting down the interceptions, or is it going to be more like 2024, where he was turning the ball over, putting the ball in harm's way, and making mistakes on a weekly basis?
Looking at those pass catchers, Chris Hunter returns as the second leading wideout last year. That was only marginal production, 6'1", 192. He'll take over as the top outside pass catcher. 2 nice portal ads, though. The first being Chris Hudson, saw 200-plus snaps in the slot and out wide each, 5'11", 175. Only caught 58% of his targets, but the breakout season was finally encouraging there at Washington State. Luke Wysong was a nice big play option for New Mexico. Had 70-plus yards in 6 games last year, had 110 targets. Did have 7 drops, so needs to be more consistent with his hands. Picked up Trey Spivey from Kansas State, who didn't do much in 2 years for them. Does have good size, 6'4", 217. Javon Watley from Charlotte had some solid production of nearly 700 yards as well. Jeremiah Patterson caught a pass in the first 11 games each last fall. Limited production, but was getting meaningful reps and some targets overall. Solid pass catching room here, I'd say, with some good additions from the portal. Gives them a nice variety of players. I also get back Sam Olsen, who's the returning starting tight end. He was a pretty good pass blocker. Not much in the run game, though, but in pass protection, he was solid. Not a bad group here, Nick. Of course, it's going to be hard to overcome what they lose, but I think this is a nice variety. I love Hudson and Wysong coming over.
Yeah, I like the variety they have here. I think they really do have a bunch of different guys that can do different things and contribute for this offense. Hunter, 325 yards receiving for him and 3 scores. He was solid at times in the red zone. Sam Olsen was a decent tight end in the red zone as well, just under 200 yards, 15.1 yards for grab, and 2 scores for Olsen, who I think is a really good traditional tight end. Patterson is a solid player as well, just under 200 yards for him and 2 scores as well. He's a player that's been not bad for this program. I like what he can do as a depth piece. The 3 portal ads, I think Hudson's probably the best player out of those guys. He was really solid Washington State last year. 680 for him in the receiving yards number, 12.6 yards per grab, and 2 scores. He'll be a really good play ability there. He'll be solid. They'll get some targets. Luke Wysong was not bad at all for New Mexico. He's a guy that's got some good experience coming over from that program. 840 for him last year and 1 score. He'll certainly find a way to be involved. He had 3 games of over 100 yards, including against Arizona, where he had 129 yards and a touchdown in a game against Arizona early in the season. So kind of funny, a good scouting tape from them. Trey Spivey, I think he'll be really solid. Also good to steal a guy from a program that you're competing with in your conference in Kansas State. So good to grab him, a younger player that's got high upside. I think he'll be involved in the offense as the season goes on. This is a good unit. You like what they have here. Obviously, losing McMillan is tough. It's going to be very difficult to replace that production. But there's a lot of solid guys here that can step up and be contributors for this offense.
Now look at the run game. It was flat out poor last year. 106 yards per game, 5 rushing yards against UCF in a game in November. And they also had less than 90 in 2 of the remaining contests on the year. So they weren't able to generate much early on in the season. Had a couple of respectable games. A few of those were against lower tier opponents. So when it came to in-conference, they just had nothing for anybody. And they're going to try and get back on track with the addition of Ishmael Mahdi from Texas State. This is a guy who was very impressive. 2,300 yards rushing and 14 TDs over the last 2 years. Has elite burst. Shows nice balance, some good twitch. Overall, I think he does a good job of staying on his feet and showcasing some long speed for being 185 pounds. Behind him, Kendrick Rascano had touches in every single game. Only had a couple games where he brought good production to the table, though. Quincy Craig from Portland State was a quality dual threat back. As an efficient runner, had 30 receptions with 5 touchdowns through the air. Pretty good room here. Mahdi's capable of 15 to 20 carries per game. It's going to take a lot to get them back on track, but I think the improvement in talent is certainly going to help in that realm.
I think Mahdi's a really good player. They added, had a dip in production last year, had just under 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. Also had 24 receptions for 2 touchdowns and 200 yards. So he could be a pass threat as well. The year before that in 2023, he had 1,300 yards rushing and 10 scores. So he's a productive back that could be really solid for this team. 5'9", 190. I think the footwork on him is solid. The speed is really good there. Kendrick Riscano was solid for this team, and his reps, 350 for him and 1 score as a rotational back. Want to see what he looks like. I think Quincy Craig was not a bad add either. Or the portal, a guy that could be solid as your number 3 back. This running back room's got to be better, right? The numbers were just really poor last year. I think they made some solid moves. They went out and added 2 guys to the portal, so they're clearly trying to address the issue. Will these adjustments work, though? Got to keep an eye on that.
Now look at the offensive line. Left tackle is a spot of weakness for the Wildcats, but they returned the top 2 guys. They got most of the snaps. Michael Wooten saw more time at right tackle. Was no good. Reno Tapatatua saw the most snaps at the position. Was better, but still below average. Former defensive tackle Chuba Ma is 6'2", 350. He's going to battle with Alex Deuced, who was the starting right guard and was pretty good in pass protection for that left guard position. Kayana DeCambra was an outstanding left tackle for Hawaii, but he appears slated for the right guard position. Ty Buchanan, 6'6", 305, was an average player while playing both tackle spots. Likely going to slot in at right tackle, coming over from Texas Tech. The center loses a great starter, Josh Baker. Isaac Perez, a 325-pounder, was the starter for Portland State and will battle a senior IC Matoi Tia, who has barely seen the field in his career. I think this offensive line will be as good as it was last year. I like some of the portal adds and the veterans that return, but following some crucial losses, improvement's going to be hard to find, but I think they see progression at left tackle at least, Nick. I think this will be a quality group, nothing too ugly, nothing too great either.
Yeah, it's definitely a middle-of-the-road unit in this conference. I think Wooten's not a bad player. I think he'll be better at left tackle than he was at his previous positions in the offensive line. I think Ty Buchanan was a really solid add at right tackle, a guy I think you can get more out of and be reliable. He was at Texas Tech. He's a solid player, also adding a couple different guys from slower programs. Isaac Perez, I think, is a really good add. He'll compete at center and try to win that battle there. This is a mix-and-match offensive line. There's some guys returning. There's some guys out of the portal here. I think it's a middle-of-the-road unit. I don't think it's going to burn this team too badly, but I don't think it's going to be a huge net positive either. I think it's just going to be a middle-of-the-road unit that you won't see a whole lot of if you're an Arizona fan. They'll just be there trying to be solid against the run, solid in run blocking, because that's something they need to find a way to do. Be solid in pass protection as well. This unit's not anything special, but it's also not super detriment, just a middle-of-the-road unit in this conference.
Looking at the offensive verdict, I went with a B-. I think the offense really struggled last year outside of McMillan being a high-end playmaker, and he's gone now, and they have a ton of things to improve on. More stable passing attack, a run game that has a pulse, and an offensive line that can help pave the way for consistency. I think they'll improve as they've beefed up the talent and brought in more competition up front, and I think Fafita, of course, can be really good. I'm still going to go with a B-, Nick. I think him and this pass-catching trio can be good, but way too many times last year you've just seen them not in sync outside of him and McMillan. So that has to improve. B minus for now. I think they can certainly itch with a B because I think this new offensive coordinator brings some more explosiveness and tempo to the table. So not the worst unit in the world, but certainly not one that I'm over the moon about.
Yeah, I think a B minus is a fair grade here, right? This is a unit that's got some solid pieces. I like that trio they have wide receiver. I think Fafita is a really good quarterback, but I worry about the production in the running back room. I think he's solid. They added Mahdi, who I think is a really good back. I think the tight end room is not bad either. The offensive line, it's again middle of the road unit, so nothing too crazy here. I just think this offense is just not up to full pace in the Big 12. I think losing McMillan, your best player, is always going to hurt, and it's always going to be tough to replace that sort of production here. They went out, they added guys in the portal, which I think was a key thing to do. I like what the coaching staff has done in that regard. But I just think this is screams a middle of the road offense that's just not super phenomenal. They're not going to blow a lot of teams out, but they're not going to be in a lot of situations. They're not going to put up a ton of points on the board. They'll be around hopefully closer to 24, 25 points per game this year. I think that's a realistic expectation potentially, but they got to find a way to score points. They got to find a way to be more consistent on the ground, because being in the 115 and 120th range in points per game and rush yards per game, it's just not good enough if you want to compete in this conference.
Now we move to the defensive side of the ball. In 2023, this was a phenomenal unit. And this past year, following the departure of pretty much the whole staff, they fell off tremendously, giving up almost 32 points per game. Weren't really strong in any particular area, and they returned 7 starters. The top 4 tacklers are back, and they added 12 in the portal, so we got some good experience at least, starting with the defensive line. Trey Smith, the only returning starter up front, which is good considering he was the most consistent of the bunch, led the team with 4.5 sacks. Dominic Lacio saw 250 snaps as a redshirt freshman, but was no good. Picked up some FCS transfers. Chancellor Owens from Northwestern State. He had 70 tackles as a defensive end, and the Malachi Bailey from Alcorn State, who was a great pass rusher, won 9.5 sacks. Look at the interior defensive line. More transfers. Taiwolia Sevilla, he arrives from Texas, 295-pounder. Didn't play much for the Horns, but he was here at Arizona in 22 and 23 and was a great run defender. A couple seasons back, Deshaun McKnight comes over from UT Martin. He was an incredibly stout run defender, 290-pounder for the Skyhawks. Julian Salvina was only 260 last year, so didn't see much time, but should be adding more size and will occupy the interior. A 280-pounder, Jara Anderson didn't play last year, so some solid depth here. I think the portal adds will bring some better, more consistent pass rush, but the ceiling's still not ultra high for Arizona. Nick, what do you make of what they've accomplished so far this offseason?
They've added some solid pieces here. They returned some solid pieces, but this is still a defensive line that's got to be a little bit stronger this year. Trey Smith's your big leader, 53 total tackles, 8 tackles lost, 4.5 sacks. He'll be really solid this year. Had a pass breakup as well. I think he's a guy you can certainly rely on to be a key difference maker coming off the edge there. His partner, Dominic Lacelso, was not phenomenal last year, 26 total tackles, 3 tackles lost, 1 sack. He's got to be a little bit better here. I think he's a player that's got some solid attributes, but just really needs to find a way to put the full package together. They went out and they went in the portal. Chancellor Owens from Northwestern State, he was a solid ad. I think 6'3", 260. He could be really solid in the interior. Maybe needs to bulk up just a little bit. Malachi Bailey from Alcorn State, he was solid for them last year. He's a guy that's a hard hitter, really solid against the run as well. I think he could be good. Deshaun McKnight was not a terrible ad from UT Martin. He was very strong for them, nearly 300 pounds. He's a big physical player that will be solid. And then Sevilla coming back from Texas after previously being in Arizona. He had 22 total tackles, 6 sacks for loss, 1.5 sacks, 3 QB hurries in 2023. Last season only played in a handful of games early in the season. Also randomly got a tackle against Ohio State in the playoffs. He's a player, though, that they are high on getting him back on campus. They're a guy that's bounced around college football for a while. Maybe he's got something to provide here on the interior. Some decent players here. I think they went out and addressed the needs in the portal, and getting back Trey Smith is a big returning ad because he was huge in production-wise last year, was a key asset for this defense. Expecting a big season. Double-digit sacks is certainly possible for him.
Look at the middle of this defense. At linebacker, Chase Kennedy spent plenty of time off the edge last year. Looks like he'll be playing more of a linebacker role this fall, though. He wasn't very good in either spot last season, but he's 6'3", 220. Makes more sense to be on the inside. Return the starting top backer, Tay Brown, who was an efficient tackler, was pretty good against the run. Needs to find better striding coverage, though. The addition of Riley Wilson from Montana was a great one. He was elite for them in all regards. Great edge rusher, did work versus the run. Also saw plenty of snaps at linebacker. And again, if being around 230 pounds, he might be better suited for the middle of this defense. The versatility in this linebacking group is significantly of note. Max Harris comes over from Texas State. His 4th school in 4 years. He's only been an average player at best, so I wouldn't expect much from him. Then you also got Blake Gotcher, who was a starter for Northwestern State last season. He was also just average versus the run, but he did have 106 tackles. I actually really like this room, Nick. I think they can impress with the depth and versatility. There's a couple players I noted right there that can, they're capable of playing linebacker and also coming off the edge as a pass rusher. So I'm very intrigued to see how they manage this group's versatility and skill.
A very versatile unit. I think it's not a bad unit at all for this conference. I think Tay Brown's a great leader at linebacker. 69 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 2 pass breakups. He's been really good for this team. He'll be solid again this year. Chase Kennedy, very versatile, but wasn't super productive at either linebacker or off the edge there. He could come off the edge on that right side, though. 23 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and a pass breakup for him. He's a really solid player that they get back. I think he's got some more production left in the tank. Riley Wilson was a solid add. I think he'll be really good for Montana. Max Harris has bounced around college football for a while. Maybe he'll find a way to get involved. He's been experienced in the sport. But I think Brown and Kennedy are two really good leaders, and I think Wilson could really add that solid depth and rotational ability that they need here. I like what this linebacker core can do.
Now I look at the secondary for Arizona. Health wasn't exactly ideal, as there was only 2 players that saw more than 9 games last year. Takaru Davis is one of them, and he transfers out. Marquise Groves Killebrew played 9 games, but he was very poor in his action and coverage and versus the run. John O'Price only saw 2 contests as a redshirt freshman. Rest of the room is made up of transfers primarily. Javion Cole comes over from Texas, only saw a few snaps in his time. Aiden Garnes was a starter in the first half of the season for West Virginia before getting hurt. He was exceptional versus the run. He did struggle in coverage immensely, though. Michael Dansby from San Jose State, who was a starter all year long, he was very respectable in coverage, but he was inconsistent. He was also a willing run stopper as well. Traden Stooks was expected to mold into a star for them last year, but suffered a torn ACL 4 weeks into the season. He was great back in 2023. Loved his improvement. Should be a mainstay in the slot, one of the better defensive backs in the conference. Jason Frosto Ramos has been, he's been solid in some of the action he got from Stanford for a couple of seasons. Genesis Smith was great for them at safety last year. Missed 15 tackles, but overall was good versus the run. Did well in coverage. Ended up being in the starting slot on top of his safety duties after the Stooks injury. So now that he just has probably more one role to focus on, he should certainly up his play. And then Dalton Johnson's a safety who played nearly 600 snaps in the box. So you'd think he was a linebacker basically, especially since he didn't provide any ball production. But as the leading tackler, showcased to be a great leader they can lean on anywhere. They also had Jack Luttrell, who played lots of snaps across 8 games, but he was incredibly poor in all regards, a veteran nonetheless. I really like the secondary. Plenty of bodies, got some pieces they can move around wherever. I think if health is good for them, this can be one of the more impressive groups in the country, Nick. I think Johnson, Smith, and Stooks is just a phenomenal trio to base things off.
I really like this secondary. I think Johnson is very versatile. You could play him at linebacker as well. They're going to move him around, play him in the box a little bit, get more out of him. Dalton Johnson's a great player overall. 94 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups, top returning tackler from the team last year. I think he's really good. Genesis Smith is a really solid player. Got to clean up the missed tackles, but still a great player. 63 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3 picks, 6 pass breakups. He was really solid for this team. Jack Luttrell, he's got to be better, but he had some decent production. 39 total tackles, 3 interceptions, and a pass breakup for him. Groves Killebrew, 26 total tackles, a sack for him, and 4 pass breakups. He was solid. Traden Stooks, if he can play up to the full level that he expected to, he will be really good for this team. 18 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a pick, and 2 pass breakups prior to the injury last year. He's a player that they can certainly rely on. They want to expect a lot out of him. I look at Cole coming over from Texas. He had, didn't really do anything for the Longhorns last year, but he did have 38 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 3 picks in 2023. He's a guy hoping to get back to that level this year. While Garnes was solid for West Virginia before his injury, 25 total tackles for him in his reps early on. He was a guy that you could certainly rely on in that secondary. And then Dansby was not bad at all for San Jose State, had 2 interceptions and 7 pass breakups. He's a pretty good coverage asset. I like what the secondary can do. This has got a lot of different guys here, a lot of depth. They added some names in the portal that were solid as well. The secondary is a really good strength for this defense and one of the better units in this conference.
I look at the verdict for this Wildcat defense. I have a good feeling about this unit. I think the defensive line and edge group might not have the greatest production, but they have some quality players and some depth in the linebackers group / secondary is full of versatility and players that can move all around, all over the place, put them in all kinds of different positions to be successful. I think you see a sizable improvement on the side of the ball, quite frankly, Nick. I don't think they'll be anywhere near as bad as they were last year. Still going to give it a B- across the board. This is another group, though, where they can exceed expectations, and it wouldn't shock me one bit, which would certainly lead to a higher grade.
Yeah, certainly this is a unit that has a high ceiling. In my opinion, this is a great unit with a lot of different guys here. Like what they added at the portal, like what they returned. Trey Smith's a really good guy on the defensive line. I think the secondary's got some good key pieces, while Dalton Johnson's very versatile, and they'll find a way to use him. Tay Brown's a great leader at linebacker. A B- unit that can certainly grow to a B+, come the end of the season.
I move to the schedule and the prediction for the Wildcats. Arizona was shockingly terrible last season, but I think this is a year where they can get back on track. I think the defense will take some sizable leaps, and the offense has too much starting talent to be mediocre once again. Will they compete for a conference? I think it's certainly possible if they can find more efficiency on offense. The only issue is Brennan is, a good coach at his best. His rise through the ranks isn't exactly one you can point to and showcase a strong track record. He's not a guru on offense by any means. Potential is there to do good this season, but the coaching, I think, might hurt him at the end of the day. It's important to point out that Kansas State, much like last year, is a non-conference game, so they're certainly getting the short end of the stick there. But they do host them, so an opportunity there for them. I don't think this team will be as bad as people think, Nick. You went ahead and picked them to make a bowl game. I think they'll win 5 games, and I think they can certainly hit bowl status. But some of the things I pointed out right there lead me to think this is going to be a tough challenge long term when it comes to the coaching. We could be wrong. I just do not feel it when it comes to a Big 12 program. I don't think Brett Brennan is the right man to be in charge, but this is going to be a solid year for him to be able to prove that.
Yeah, I also don't think he's the right man to be in charge. He has 3 winning seasons over 8 seasons as a head coach in college football. Started at Group of 5 level at San Jose State before the 1 year at Arizona. But only 3 winning seasons in those 8 seasons, and that includes the COVID year where they went 7-1, 7-5, and 7-6 in his last 2 seasons at San Jose State. 4-8 last year. I know they were put in a bad situation because their coach got hired by Washington, whose coach got poached by Alabama late in the cycle. So there wasn't really a whole lot of coaches to go around for Arizona, and they were kind of put in a tough situation here. But I just don't know if Brennan has a long-term chance at Arizona. If they go 4-8 this year, I would not be surprised he gets fired at the end of the season. They try to reset and get somebody better out of the market here. I just don't know if he's exactly a Big 12 coach long-term, and Arizona seems kind of stuck. I have them at 6-6. I think they beat Houston on October 18th, which is the trap game for a reason, because that's a very tough game on the road. Houston is a team that could potentially surprise some people. The rest of the losses, I'm right there with you. I think they make a lot of sense, but I do see this team getting to 500 at 6-6, knocking off Houston and finding a way to get the job done. They play Hawaii, Weber State early on. Those are 2 easy wins. I think they can beat Kansas, Oklahoma State, BYU, all teams at home. They can potentially shock Baylor at home as well on November 22nd, but I'm pretty high on that Baylor team. The rest of the road trips are pretty tough outside of the aforementioned Houston game. I like some of the parts of the team. I think Trey Smith's really good on the defensive side of the ball. I think Tay Brown is a really good linebacker. I look at the offense. I like that trio they have. I think Fafita is a fun quarterback to watch when he's playing to his full level. I think the tight end room is quite solid as well for this program. The coaching I'm a little iffy on. I think the team in general, it just feels like a very mid-average team in the Big 12. I have them at 6-6. I wouldn't be surprised they go 4-8. Something like that, maybe even worse than that. But I think they'll find a way to get at least 4 wins. But definitely a disappointing spot for this Arizona program. They were hoping to do more last year. They fell flat on their face. I'm expecting another tough season where they're kind of just stuck in neutral down in Tucson.
Yeah, I think you're right. If they go 4-8 in disappointing fashion again, and they're not that competitive, they're definitely going to make a move. There's plenty of good coordinators out there. They can go to the SEC and I think hire right away. So certainly coaching for his job here, but I don't think this team will be that bad, and I think he'll be around for 2026. It's going to be it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.